On this week's episode, we have Ross Faulkner, 47-year veteran in the construction industry. He's the president of Auckland Master Builders. He's also on the board of BCITO. He is one of those experienced guys you want to listen to and learn from. So on this week's episode, we cover a whole bunch of topics, including how he builds his team up, how he creates great culture, the way that he's grown his business sustainably. Him and his team have won numerous Master Builders Awards. If you want to hear from someone with real experience in the construction game, Ross is that guy. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get into it. What is success to you?
I think it was a learn to love it experience.
And there's always pitfalls that you can fall in, but then you've got no one else to blame but yourself.
Number one thing if you're struggling is to catch other people about it.
Ross Faulkner, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. We like to, you've listened to a couple of episodes you mentioned before, which we appreciate. Every listen out there helps us with the algorithms. But yeah, we always like to start from the beginning, as you probably would have heard. So give me a bit of a rundown on where you grew up, Ross, and what that was like.
Yep. Okay. I grew up in Pakuranga. We had a new house down there by the Tamaki River. We had a very tidy backyard. It was a fantastic place. The neighbourhood was all young. We had young kids all up the street and all got on pretty well. And the local primary school was just up the road. Very social family time, and I don't think I wore shoes until I went to secondary school, and everything was outdoors and a lot of fun in the mud and the water and boating and all the stuff in our backyard. So it was great time. Yeah.
Sounds like a but you give it nostalgic about it, almost the way that you're presenting.
Yeah, I view my childhood as a real fun time, and one of my best mates there, his father built a yacht, and luckily had two sails on it, so you needed two people to go on the boat to crew it. So I was always on the boat, and I learnt to sail from that and loved the sailing. As I grew up, we worked out that we could actually do skimboarding and having a round piece of plywood, and did that in the mud, and we actually developed the mud bed into quite a flat area, and we had a lot of fun there. And then we worked that we could actually use a rope and tow each other, and of course that was a lot of fun until you start going into the corners and hitting the edge of the mud where something grabs your board and you're flying through the air and coming up with bruises and mud and all over your face. And it was a lot of fun, but a great place, and did have a great childhood down there. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's awesome memories. What were you like as a young kid? Were you kind of like a quiet one? Were you a bit like boisterous? Who was Ross when he was a little fella?
I was a quiet one, actually. I suppose I was the eldest of three children. Typical oldest child that has to do everything right.
Be responsible.
Yeah, be the responsible one. I was always told that when I was sat in a spot, I didn't move from that spot. Just my personality, I suppose. I was a listener more than a talker. My parents were a huge influence on me. My father was in the police force. So as I grew up, I was always probably in awe of what he was doing, and making sure I didn't want to step out of line because of his job. I suppose I was never going to break the law or anything like that. And I think that he was a big guy, probably 6'3" like I am, basically, and he was probably close to 20 stone at some time. So he's quite a big man, and
unit.
He is a big unit, and he was getting promoted all the time. So he's working up through the police force and taking a lead of several horrible murders and things that were happening out there. So we were in the background of that, and I think I learnt from him not to bring my work home. He was very conscious of not letting us know what was going on behind the scenes and just making sure that what stayed at work, and I've probably learnt that kind of thing from my father. So,
yeah, that's super interesting. So you, as a young kid, you were sort of kept at arm's length. You never really knew what was going on, or did you sometimes pick up on a few things?
I can remember several times when we had a 2-story house, and we lifted the house actually later on, but when it was a single level, we knew when somebody bad had been let out of prison because Dad would change the seating around the dining room table so he could keep an eye on the road. And so that's when I knew that there's something more going on behind the scenes. And
right.
And he'd tell us, if you see a strange car coming down the road, let me know. So,
yeah.
I suppose that's a bit of something you don't really appreciate what was going on. And when I look at it now, I think, well, there's some nasty people out there that might want to do something to the family just to try and get even because he's responsible for somebody being locked up for several years for what they did. But, yeah.
Yeah. And how did your mum handle all that? Was your mum, what role did she play? And did she work? Was she stay-at-home mum?
Mum was a stay-at-home until we were all at school, and then she luckily got a job at the local school up the road. So she worked the 9 to 3 hours, and again, it was a school. Even at school, we couldn't misbehave because she was working in the headmaster's office, and we had to be careful of what we were doing. But not that I was one to push the boundaries. It's more my younger brother probably that did that.
Yeah, because every time you go to the headmaster's office, you have to probably walk past her first, and she'll notice.
Definitely. Yeah, she knew.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so how was high school? So then you kind of stayed where you were for high school. You didn't move anywhere else. You kind of stayed in the same neighbourhood?
Yep, we stayed there all the way through until I got married, and even when we got married, we lived in the house for a while. I was only a midstream student. I wasn't fantastic at science or that. One of my strengths was probably more on the math side of it. I managed to do reasonably well in maths, not top of the class or anything, but I knew my maths, and I love my woodwork. And woodwork is something I got introduced to when I was at primary school, and I remember they asked us what kind of crafts we wanted to do, and I chose this big block of probably a metre long piece of totara, and I decided I was going to make a boat out of it.
Cool.
And for 2 years I had a chisel and a hammer, and I was chiselling out the middle of this piece of 4x4 and learning about grains, which way grains run, and how to not chisel too close to the edges because it splits and all this kind of stuff. But unfortunately, after the 2 years was almost up, I decided, right, this is just taking far too long, and I took the bit of wood and all the carvings I'd done, took it down to the house that was being worked on behind us, and asked the builder to chop everything off so I could start again and just make it a piece of solid timber for the boat instead of trying to make a big ship out of it.
Yeah. So you already had like a bit of an interest in there, and was your parents, obviously they probably would have noticed that. Were they quite encouraging for you to kind of keep that going, and what was that like?
No, but probably didn't really develop that much that way. I was always building tree huts and things like that, I suppose. My uncle had bought a property down at Arran Bay in Waiheke, and there's a 10-acre block, and there's a small annex next door to it that my dad was able to develop, and he built that up into a very small 2-bedroom batch, and my main job was helping him bring the materials down this very steep road into Arran Bay, which is rather not good for health and safety reasons these days. But they had all their roofing sheets on a trolley, and that was a really steep site. And my father, my sister and I to jump on the end of the iron when it started going too fast for him. He was losing control. So we're there adding friction to this load of stuff going down this hill, which was rather interesting.
Yeah. No, you're like the tie downs on the sheets, which is not not great for the kids to be on.
Yeah.
So so you kind of like working with your hands. You like kind of started building things. You obviously sounds like you were a bit creative when it came to that.
Yep.
And so what was the next step? Did you finish school? How did you kind of get into eyeing up maybe doing building as a career choice?
Yeah, I finished it in the sixth form. Got got a job. Basically, I knew I was wanting to be a builder. I always had a goal from probably the third form. I always knew I was going to go into the building industry. And my parents knew a family that knew a builder, and my father and I went for the interview, and I hardly said anything, and my dad and the boss of the old company that I ended up working for, they had the interview, and I said, okay, well, you can start shortly, sort of thing. So I was working at the freezing works in the school holidays before I started, and so I knew what hard work was like, and working in the freezing works isn't very good on the offal line when you're tailing out the intestines of a sheep. So I knew what hard work was like in the real world, and I've been working in the school holidays and other factories as well on the production line. So
Right. So when they were like, "Oh, you're going to have to dig a hole, mate," and you'd be like, "Mate, this is nothing."
that's exactly right. Exactly right.
Okay. So then, what was that first day like? So you your dad negotiated your pay packet and your job for you.
Yeah,
And then...
it's a little while ago, Brad. I don't specifically remember what I was doing, but I know we were working on a intermediate school out in Papakura, and we lived in Pakuranga, and I worked for a company that had the father as the original owner of the business, and he had two sons that were both involved in the business. So there's 6 of us at the time, and I was the newest apprentice. The boss's youngest son was one of the apprentices as well, and there's another apprentice who both in their 3rd year, and I was a new guy starting off. And I still do remember being the tea boy and having to make the tea at a certain time. And after, I think it was probably the first week, I was asked why I'm standing there watching the jug boil and not coming out, and there's this big urn, and I'd filled it up and waiting for it to boil so that I could make the tea. But that was probably where I started, and I remember helping out in concrete work and just pushing a wheelbarrow and starting off at the very bottom as everybody does, and taking a while to pick it up and getting my ass kicked when obviously not doing things right. And I remember that we had a transit truck, and everybody had their tool kits in the back of it, and I was told to go and find the spoke shave or the rasp or whatever it was. And often you go in there and there's so much stuff, I just could not see what this thing was. And they come in after 5 minutes, what the hell are you doing, Ross? Where's the stuff you're looking for? And here it is here. Oh, God, it's right in front of me, and you just can't see it. And so it was frustrating at the start, and it took, as it does with a lot of apprentices, probably took me about 2.5, 3 years before it started clicking, and I was probably becoming a lot more useful at that stage.
And what year would that have been, or what year was that?
It was 78. I would have started my apprenticeship. I think it was 77,
Right.
78.
So so team culture surrounding the apprentices probably wasn't sort of high on the list of what they were worried about in terms of making sure you feel welcome and safe.
No, it was interesting because with three of the same people in the family, I still remember the boss coming along and telling me, "I want you to do this way," and I start doing it this way, and then the oldest son would come along and say, "What the hell are you doing it like that for? Do it this way." Then the third one come along and tell me to do it a third way, and then the first guy came back and said, "What the hell are you doing?" And I remember that being I didn't know how to handle that very well, and I said, "Well, I've been told to do it this way." "No, you do it the way I told you to do it."
Too many chiefs, not enough Indians
far
there.
too much.
Yeah. Sounds like everyone was the boss there, except for you.
Yeah, well, it was, but it was. I did learn how not to do some things, and I learned some things about responsibilities, I suppose, and getting up. And I was picked up. I had to walk up the road to get picked up by the boss's son, and he used to drive in the morning, and he had a bit of I'm sure he had something going on behind the scenes, because he was a grumpy bugger first thing in the morning and didn't want to talk to you or anything like that, and it was just going to work. And the other young guys that were there were pretty good, but
Yeah, it's very interesting, especially, I mean, obviously now these days it's definitely changed, like apprentices probably get a little bit more, not all the way, but a little bit more coddled, a little bit more, encouraged, and, they should be encouraged as well, but yeah, back then it was a little bit different, You just sort of just kind of like get on or get off, or, you just got to
Yeah, it was. I wouldn't say they were as bad as I've heard some people are. And I know empathy is a huge thing that I value. And as a boss now, I look back and think, could they have done things differently? Yes, they could have, but it's something that I've learnt from and I bring into my business now. So I'm very conscious of young guys and what they're going through, and it's scary. And the big boss being me now come on site because the old bugger comes on site and he's here, and I don't know quite how they react to it, but I'll make sure I do talk to them and make sure they feel reasonably welcome and ask them what's going on, how things going, and
Yeah.
what are you doing now, just to show a bit of interest in them.
Yeah, I think that's good, eh? So let's transition into that. So how long did it take for you to kind of say, I'm going to do my own thing, start Faulkner Construction and run your own business? Was that a while after you got qualified until you started your own business?
Yeah, unfortunately, the business that I did my apprenticeship with was coming, with the building industry at the time was just coming into a recession, and were reducing their workflow. They didn't have much else to come on to. The old guy was getting ready to retire, and there's a bit of a conflict of what their business was going to do. So I went out and found another job and worked labour only with another guy, and we actually one of the first things I was doing when I was out of my apprenticeship was working on a castle out in Tauranga. There's a fake castle that was something I worked on for a while. It gets a lot of publicity occasionally, but I actually worked on that and did a couple of months on that before I actually moved off to another job. But
cool.
Did some labour only for another builder. We built two nice not A-frame, but they're very steep pitched roofs, 2 units. And from that, decided that it was probably a good time to start heading out and deciding to do my own stuff. And I was doing small fences and decks and doing the odd jobs and adding the courier and the packering out times, and I was picking up very small stuff. And then I got approached about doing a renovation, and I priced this renovation, and lo and behold, I got it. And I thought, my God, it's all on me now, and what am I going to do? So I was a bit worried about it, so I went and asked for some help from the local building merchants I was using, and said, do you know another builder that could give me a hand in this? And this guy called Ross Faulkner was introduced to me, another Ross in the business. And he came along and we worked on this job, and he was probably a really good mentor for me at the time. He was probably 10 or 15 years older than what I was. And this particular job, the words still ring in my ear. We were building this this renovation, and I'd put in this door and put wedges in the door and to get it all plumbed up. And he said to me afterwards, after I'd finished, he said, "You're going to leave it like that." Simple words. Are you going to leave it like that? They still ring so loud now. And I looked at the store and thought, you can get away with it. It's something you could do. But I ended up taking it all out and ripping down a whole lot of packers and doing it with solid packers on the sides and took the wedges out. And it was that day, I can still see it so clearly, where I decided I can either go and do it an easy, fast, cheap, rough way, or am I going to do it the quality way? And from that day forward, I chose the quality way because I much prefer to do a quality job. And that was a turning point for me. And so we worked together, Ross and I worked together for many years afterwards. And I had ambitions to grow my own business, and I ended up taking on an apprentice, my first apprentice probably about 89, I think it was. I took my first apprentice on and have basically taken on an apprentice basically every year since, and I think we've well over 40 apprentices we've trained over the years, and something I'm very passionate about is giving back to the industry and all kinds of ways of do it. But the apprentices, I love seeing apprentices go from a kid straight out of school, his eyes are bright in the headlights and wondering what the hell is going on, and not mature at all, and mentally or physically, and just watching them grow and seeing the switch like I did when I was in my third year, basically getting flicked, and they actually start understanding, this is what it's about. And growing. It's a really great. It's one of my pleasures in
Yeah.
the building industry, seeing what they
It
can
is
do.
cool, seeing the young guys. We once a month we do an apprentice episode with through Builders Academy. We get like an apprentice on, or we talk about apprentice related issues. It always kind of, it's real fun for me actually to do those interviews as well, because you can kind of see them kind of like getting excited and growing and getting better.
Yep.
How did you, in terms of your leadership leadership approach, were you quite good from the start? When you hired that first apprentice, you're trying to get some work done. They come on site, they don't know anything. They stuff up. What was your sort of approach to leadership then, and has it evolved?
Yeah, I remember the very first day. My first apprentice that came to site, his name was Aaron, and the night before or the day before, I rang him up and said, "Look, it's been raining. You're gonna need to bring gumboots with you." And it might have even been first thing in the morning that I rang him, and he turned up late because he'd been looking for his gumboots. And another guy I had working with me was also late. So I was very pointedly at my other tradesman. I said, "Why were you late this morning?" and made a big scene of it, way more than what I ever do. But the apprentice got it. So I didn't say anything to the apprentice, but he knew from what I was saying that I expect him to be on time. And he said to me afterwards, "Well, I had to find my gumboots, and my gumboots were wet, so I was trying to dry them out because they'd been stuck outside in the rain the night before." So, yeah, you learn things. But, I certainly have developed. I've been very conscious of apprentices having a full apprenticeship, and which is working from the foundations right through to fitting the hardware and trying to do the whole job, even doing jib board. And I know the industry's changed a lot now, and a lot of that doesn't happen, but I'm very conscious that we want a full-rounded apprentice to be the future of the construction industry, and that's the only way it can work. And that's why New Zealand apprentices are so sought after when they go overseas. I've got a son in Australia, and he's advertising in New Zealand for apprentice, or for anybody that's leaving New Zealand to come into the Gold Coast. He wants them to come and see him because he knows how our guys are taught so much better than what the Aussies are.
Yeah.
And I know it happens in the States, but New Zealanders are well sought after. But our training of apprentices has evolved. We have apprentice nights at work now. At the moment, we've got eight apprentices working for us, and we get them in every 3 months, and we do a training session for them. And it's might be way ahead of what they're talking about, and understanding what measurements are and plans and what that means for the angles of the boundary lines and things like that. And they don't see the detail in the plans, and asking for basic stuff.
Yeah.
For the newer ones, tell me where north is on the plan, and where do you find your datum point, and what are your boundary pegs? And if you're going onto a street where there's no houses, and you're looking for number 12, and it's lot 52, how are you going to find it? And things like that. And it's developed, and we've got other leaders in our company now that are starting to take over from me, which is what I love. That these guys are coming and seeing what they can do, and they're adding to it. So, and we do the same with tradesmen too. We have tradesmen's nights as well. So we do a higher level one with them, and talking about mental health with them, and making sure that they have an idea of what to look for if there's people having issues with stuff outside of work or even stuff at work. And we try very hard to have a well-rounded person coming through.
Yeah, that's amazing. I want to talk a little bit more about that as well, especially about the mental health aspects as well. But talk to me a little bit about your company now. So you've been around 47 years.
Yep.
3 years away from half a decade. So not a lot of companies can say that, A lot of building companies go into liquidation every single year.
Yep.
And so the fact that you've made it 47 is it's not a small feat by any means. So well done.
Thank you.
Talk to me a bit about your company now. Like, how big is the team? What's the structure? Do you guys have a bunch of office staff on site? Like, how have you set it up?
Yeah, we've grown probably over the last 15 years. We've been conscious of growing is probably about 8 or 9 years ago. I started thinking about an exit strategy for myself, and I remember in the early days, well, not early days, probably after I'd been in the business for about 20 years, I was talking to my accountant and mentioned that one day I might want to sell my business, and he said, no, nobody ever want to buy a business like yours, Ross. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. So it's funny things that you remember about what you say to people and what sticks in your mind. But I'd heard of other builders that had sold their businesses, and I did a little bit of research and knew that you had to position your business correctly, and so I was very conscious of making sure that we were doing everything right to build a business and have the right kind of figures behind it to make sure it was appealing to somebody that they might want to get into it. And so we spent a while developing that side of it, working with architects more to try and grow a pool of architects we were working with, because we used to use the local architects and we didn't do any of the mainstream bigger architects as such. Got a lot of work, grew our staff, and we now got a total of 24 on the tools. We've got 6 in the office basically, 1 part-timer doing our books, our actual accountancy side of it. We've now got a new partner that's brought into the business. 4 years ago, another guy by the name of Ross McConnell, who's I selected him. He comes from a commercial background. He used to work for Fletcher's for a while and went overseas and did a whole lot of other stuff outside of the construction industry. He came in. I'm very good at the technical side, but whenever I wanted to grow my business, and I knew that the computering side of it was something that needed to be developed, and I used to go along to the trade shows and specifically look at the programs that were out there for what might help me. And I still remember going to several of them and asking them a question about something, and they'd tell me the answer, and I didn't know what the next question was.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm just going to go back to my old way and do it, and writing up my quotes in my long book and doing my things my way, which worked for me, but it was also a bottleneck for the business. So I knew that I needed to bring somebody in that understood a different side of the business, had different skills to me, hopefully from a building background somewhere. And Ross came in and filled that role really well, and we've now got some of possibly the best software available in Procore, which is our software package we use. It's I don't want to be advertising it, but it's a fantastic program that takes all your plans. One of the first things that I picked up on was that you can load all your plans onto the program. All you guys on site get access to all the plans. When there's an updated plan coming in, you can overlay it over the last plan, so you can actually see all the changes. And that caught my eye. That's what I love being able to do. It's great. We've had to integrate it with. We had to change our software accounting system from MYOB to Xero because we were told that it would work with MYOB, but it does in Australia, but not New Zealand, we found out.
Oh, right, okay.
So,
well, Xero's pretty good. I don't know what MYOB is.
Xero's great.
Yeah,
Xero's good too.
Yeah.
But we've done that. We use it for all our pricing now. We use it for all our accounting side. We're sending all our invoices from it. It's a full package, and we're now developing a new part of it, which is data analytics, which is giving us the reports from our last 3 years we've been using it, and you can give us reports that are going to be useful for the future. And that's something that Ross has been working with Procore to develop, how it actually integrates into our business. And that's something that little old New Zealand and Faulkner Construction are helping a giant company like Procore in the States develop a system for construction industry, which is something we love.
Yeah, amazing. Well, great foresight to kind of get someone in with, different skill sets, opposite skill sets to you to get that in. I think we're kind of touching on it before as well, but I love it around the analytics, what the growth of, artificial intelligence would do as well in the construction industry, because with that, you know, a lot of that, and it's going to be those analytics going to be on steroids, right? 'Cause it can just come back to you and go, hey, next time do this differently, and next time remember to you know, allow more for this during this price when you price this project up. Like just in every, I'm just talking very elementary now, but almost in every element of how you run the business, how you price the business, how you do the back costing, all of that with AI's involvement is going to get more and more, you know, better, easier.
Yeah, well, it got brought home to me on one job where we had a different quantity survey working for us, and we had a job we were doing, and it was unfortunately for the client, it was a charge up job, and there's a lot of stuff going on in the job. And I remember the client coming in saying, "Look, how much is it going to cost to finish?" And we gave him a figure after we'd gone away and worked it out, and we are miles out. And unfortunately, it caused a problem and a bit of an issue, and we got it wrong. But this is where we knew that our systems were not good enough to do what was needed, and so we fixed the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in terms of the projects that you guys work on at the moment, paint a bit of a picture for me. So what type of projects do you do? How big are the projects? What sort of revenue range do you guys sit in at the moment?
We have, well, with the recession going through at the moment, we've been picking up everything we could do until recently. We've now put a cap on our jobs unless there's a technical reason for doing it. Anything under 100,000, we're not going to be too keen on doing.
Yeah.
We're up to anything up. We're doing a $5 million renovation at the moment. So that's one of the bigger contracts we're involved in at the moment. So we're doing everything through that. But the work we like, or the work I've always liked doing, is the technically challenging stuff. I don't like building the smaller, simpler stuff. I like getting out of bed to go and be challenged. And this job we're doing at the $5 million one has got some great challenges in it, and it's not a job that every builder out there can do. And that's what all my staff love doing too. They like being challenged, and they learn a hell of a lot from it. And I'm still learning stuff from this job that keeps me excited.
Yeah.
I never have a problem getting out of bed to go to work because I love it so much.
Yeah, that's awesome, mate. That's good to know that as well, about what you're good at and what you really enjoy. And the more of that you could do, and especially as you've matured through the business and getting other people to do all the stuff that you don't enjoy as much, probably.
Yep, that's right.
And then get you to do that. Have you sort of naturally, from a leadership perspective, have you naturally just fallen into that position of being the business owner, the leader, almost like the CEO of the company, having to sort of look at the vision of the business, where you want to take it into, keeping the team motivated, you know, learning about accounts and, like, you know, talking to your accountant and upskilling? Has that sort of come naturally to you, or has it been a sort of a bit of a grind? Like, how have you found that process of building the business up over the years?
I think it's probably come more naturally. It's a strange one, because I pinch myself and ask myself, is it really me that's doing this? And how the hell have I got here, and why is this me? But it is the leadership part seems to come naturally. I'm more of a listener, as I said, than a talker. But I believe that when I've thought something through, I'm pretty sound in my reasoning, and I'm able to find a solution pretty quickly. I have a saying that problems are banned in our business. We have challenges, and we'll find solutions for it, and we don't have problems, which is a great thing to have. But but when you go to site and there's a guy asks you a question, and you quickly think about all the scenarios, and you say, okay, we're going to do it like this, and I'm very much, I'll make a decision, and that's what we're going to do. And I'm happy for other guys to bring in other ideas, and we'll look at other ideas. But when a decision's made, that's great. But again, if they find another way that's great to do, talk to me first before you change it. But there might be a very good reason why I've said no. I can see the bigger picture at the end of that if you do it like this, means this and this and this are going to come into line. And if they change something, it might mean that the substance is not going to work. So I encourage them to bring the ideas forward, and we'll make a move on it. So my leadership is I think it's pretty inclusive. I'm a big believer in letting the foreman do their stuff their own way, and I'll ask them what they're planning on doing, and put my finger in the in the puddle occasionally and change the direction a bit, but generally leave them to do it. Almost all our foremen have come through from my apprentices, so they understand the way I think about things. They understand my quality mark, what's required, and so yeah, that's something they've learnt from day one. So
Yeah.
so it's great that I can leave them to it.
That's awesome. And how many of those, you got 20 plus staff, how many sites do you sort of run at any point in time?
Generally, it's around 4 or 5, depending on the size of the projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in terms of the, I guess patience is a big thing because people look at you, they go, look at these guys, you've been around, but they don't realize you've been around 47 years. Someone, maybe they're 3, 4, 5, 6 years into their building business of running their business. How important is patience in terms of growing the business? And how important is it to get that balance right between growth and making sure the back end of your business and the foundations of the business is strong?
It's very important. You've got to make sure you do have a very good plan in place. And I know when I think it was probably just after COVID when things improved that there's a lot of encouragement to take on apprentices, and the government was offering $2,000 per apprentice basically for the employer to take them on. And I encourage a lot of employers to take on apprentices, which is both good and bad because you get the wrong employers taking on apprentices possibly, but overall for the industry is a good thing. But we did take on extra apprentices at the time because we did have the work for what was happening, but you've got to get the balance right. You can't have too many apprentices, and I've heard stories where there's 3 apprentices on there and the oldest apprentice is the one that's in charge of the job, and that's disastrous for the company and disastrous for the client and disastrous for the industry as well because it brings the industry into disrepute, which is something I'm very passionate about, making sure it doesn't happen. So you've got to be very careful, make sure you have a very good plan in place and monitor it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, a lot of construction businesses go under not because they run out of work, but they almost like become, it's at the mercy of their own success sometimes because they get so busy, they run things poorly. Because they grow so fast, they end up overseeing, just missing a lot of things, and then next thing you know, they're in liquidation because they haven't paid their bills. And so that's also probably part of it as well.
The cash flow is a hard thing to manage when you're getting big like that too, and understanding what it does to your business. Yep.
What did you do in terms of, understanding your financials better when especially in the early days? Was there quite a few years where you just kind of winging it, or from day one, did you kind of sit down with an accountant and say, hey, explain to me how this works, or how did you kind of navigate that?
It was very hard. It was a very slow learning part, that side of it. I love being on the tools. I love working with my hands. Being on site was my thing, and the paperwork side of it wasn't something I particularly enjoyed. It's something I did because it was important, but I didn't watch the finances like we do now. You always had a feeling of how things were going, and at the end of the day, when the accountant says you've got to pay this much tax, I said, "What the hell? How much tax is that? Why am I having to pay that much tax?" So I knew you get a feeling, and especially when GST came in, and you knew if you're having to pay a reasonable amount in GST, you know that something's going right. And it was always a good yardstick for me, and that's how I measured it, I suppose. But it's certainly changed now. We understand a lot more, and we watch our margins a lot more carefully, and we know which jobs are going well and which ones we didn't do things so well on.
So you guys track your every single project per project, what your profitability is per project, and how you're tracking?
Yep, we do.
And what are the numbers that are really important, maybe even some that other builders maybe overlook, or maybe you've overlooked it in the past? What are sort of the indicators for you now of the business doing well versus not?
Yeah. Well, as far as the financials are concerned, the GPs, one of the numbers you will look at, and then your net profit percentages. Sometimes they vary, and it's because of a certain jobs that's you've gone really well on, and you've claimed a lot of stuff up front, and it falls into the wrong financial year, and then at the end of the second part of the job hasn't gone so well, it catches you out, but plays with your numbers a bit. But it's something that I've never I've never been too concerned about, because I know that, as I say, the GST, when you're paying GST, you know how well you're going.
Yeah. Well, those are healthy figures. How do you know if your overheads are blowing out versus whether, you keep it under control? What sort of, do you have any numbers or percentages that you work towards?
Not so much that, but I've always been pretty frugal with the overhead side of it. I know we spend a lot more money on advertising now, and I'm not always comfortable with that, because the money that gets spent, and I say, well, okay, we spend all this money, show me what's earned for us. And a lot of our work comes from word of mouth and contacts I've developed over the years, and none yet has come from raising our name out there, but it will come. And I've got to be patient and believe the system that Ross is developing, and that's his area of expertise he's working on, and it will work in time, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But making architects more aware of us is part of it, and yeah, that's where most of our work comes from.
And how do you keep those relationships going? Talking about architects, let's talk a bit about how you get your work. So obviously, old relationships, referrals. Are you great at networking, getting out there, talking to architects, going for coffees? Playing?
No, it's something that I've been poor on. My wife started the push towards architects more when she got involved in the business, and she actually wrote them all letters and introduced ourselves, and we had a funny little flyer that worked actually for some architects. And one of the first architects that we gained from it was a guy called Malcolm Walker, who's a very well-known architect in Auckland. And
Yeah.
we've done a lot of work for Malcolm over the years, and it's because of my wife Anne making contact with him and developing a relationship, and he believing in what we're doing, and we've had a lot of great work out of him. And it's developed from that, and it's surprising what a little flyer does. And we developed another one afterwards and sent out to a lot of architects that we wanted to work with. And one guy came back to us 2 years later. He'd put this flyer in his drawer, and he'd always thought about it at the back of his head, and he actually approached us from the flyer to price this job we were doing, which is a beautiful house we did for some clients in Araki.
So what everyone wants to know, Ross, what was on that flyer? Don't tell your secrets, but was it something kind of funny or tongue in cheek, or was it just like professional? Or?
No, I'm the more serious type, so I try and do things very professionally.
Yeah, right. Okay. There's a professional flyer just showing your competence.
It was a bit of a glossy. It was a glossy A4 that's folded into 3, and it had some of the photos of our work we've done, and highlighting the little bits and pieces, and I feel a little, not so many words, but more photos, and just saying that this is the kind of work we do. We're proud of the work we do, and it's always quality and the basic stuff that what we believed architects would like to hear.
Yeah,
and worked for some.
Yeah, and a lot of builders are trying different marketing initiatives at the moment. I run a marketing business as well, so it's a conversation we always have. What do you know what you guys do at the moment, or is that the other Ross's category in terms of the...
Yeah, I know a little bit about it, so I'll probably get caught out here, but I know we're very big on Instagram, and we put up a lot of stuff on Instagram, I suppose, as a lot of stuff has gone. We've tried another, I can't remember what the other one was that we tried, but the costs were just getting prohibitive on it.
Yeah.
But we do a reasonable amount of marketing on.
Yeah,
the budgets keeps on going up. And
yeah, it is a very interesting side though, because builders have never, over the last 20, 30 years, for most of that time, builders, you didn't need to really advertise because there's always work coming through the door, and so it is a kind of like a new thing. Builders sort of are at the start line. A lot of them are at the starting line in terms of figuring that out. Because do you just throw mud at the wall and see what sticks, or do you try to have some, attribution towards, what you've spent and seeing if anything's coming in return, and how do you measure that? It is a bit of a tricky one for a lot of builders.
I think architects like seeing history, and if you can prove what you've done in the past, and this is what we're doing now. And I mean, we've been heavily involved in Master Builders Association and the House of the Year awards, and being able to show architects, here's the recent awards we've got, and this is what we do. We are still good. We've been doing it since I joined the Master Builders in '98, I think it was.
Yeah.
And we went in the House of the Year that year, and we got a gold. We won, well, it wasn't gold in those days. It was first, second, or third, and we got first in the renovation category, and that set us off. And it's something I've been very conscious of. That the House of the Year is a really good marketing thing for us. Our guys love the fact that we go in it regularly. All my foremen are now. I used to love going up on stage and collecting the award and all that kind of stuff because I was doing the work in those days, but now I send my foreman up to get the award, and if it's a gold, that's great. Most of them are gold, thank goodness. But they are responsible now. It's part of the personal growth for a foreman actually going up on stage in front of 500 people to receive their trophy. So
Yeah, that's amazing. That's good. Just kind of because people forget. We mentioned this before off air, but builders sometimes, because builders are generally good dudes, down to earth more often than not, and they don't want to receive awards, and they're also scared to be on camera and all that sort of stuff, or marketing or celebrating wins. But it's for the team, right? It's more for the team to kind of celebrate and make them feel proud and show their family. Look, I was a foreman, and look, we won this award that I was in charge of, and it's cool.
It is. It's really cool. I mean, we have an awards board at work, and everybody's name's on as a piece of paper, not a piece of paper, it's a piece of timber with engraved on it, and we have all the House of the Year awards that they've been on it. We tell them when they started, and if they're an apprentice, when they finished their apprentice, and little milestones. And if they've worked 500 hours on a job, and that house gets an award, they get that House of the Year mark on it for that job. And so it's always in their minds. It's whenever they come into the office, they can see, there's the awards board. Okay, well, hopefully the house we got actually 3 houses this year in the House of the Year, and they're all asking about when are the judges going there, how's it going, and how's it looking. So it's a quality mark for us. It's also a quality mark for the guys, and they're saying, okay, guys, it's not House of the Year. The judges are going to see that's that rubbish. Do it again, get it right.
Yeah,
it's a great thing for them to be able to work towards.
Yeah, 100%. Now, obviously, you guys have done a great job at building the business, but in any construction game, things don't always go to plan. Give me an idea. What's sort of the biggest hits you guys have taken over the years? Has there been a project where you've lost a bunch of money on, or someone's getting litigious, or how? Paint a picture, because builders want to know. A lot of builders go through those moments, and they want to know they're not alone.
Yeah, the most recent one, luckily they don't happen very often for us. We've been able to choose our clients a little bit as well. If I'm nervous about a client, I'll try and walk away from them. I don't always get it right. And sometimes there are problems on site, and we've had a client that we've had to take to court just recently. It's not a huge amount of money, I suppose, but it's a big amount of money. It's $50,000 that they owe us. The client, we did this beautiful renovation. It was a renovation on an old villa. Everything was great on it. Towards the end of the project, they decided to add in a swimming pool and complex beside it, which we priced and added it to the contract and did. Unfortunately, just probably right at the end of the job, as per usual, they had a problem with the painter and decided that the painter needed to leave site, and which was very unfortunate for everybody involved. And from that, I floated on that they decided that they weren't going to pay us their $50,000 or something, and they offered us a $20,000 amount, and I possibly should have taken it and run, but I'm very determined sometimes, and I put my feet in the ground and I won't move, and I decided, right, no, bugger it. I don't like what they're doing. I don't think what they're right. It's cost us over $20,000 already in legal costs as it does, but we've gone through the courts, and the courts have found in our favour. The courts have told them that they've got to pay the money, and of course they haven't paid the money yet. So we're now in the next stage of getting the courts to enforce it by getting the financial statements from the individual that we dealt with.
Yeah.
They ain't going to like that, but it's unfortunate you go through these things, and it's a learning for us that we thought we'd have everything covered, but when you do have problems, it's often not necessarily our fault, and the painters unfortunately, painters, if you're listening to this, you guys can make or break our jobs. And you guys, and this guy actually did cause the issue, but it wasn't as much of an issue as what the owners were making out.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's you reckon people are getting a lot more litigious now?
Especially since COVID. I think COVID has changed our culture. There certainly is a lot more conflict out there, and it's crucial that you manage it. And I've failed occasionally with communications, but I know you've got to stay communicating with clients. And when things are going wrong, and I know people have fallen out with us occasionally, and we work very hard to make sure that we still maintain a relationship with people. And you can only do that by having good communication with people.
And what advice do you have there in terms of, is it about making sure that everything's in writing, always follow things up with an email? Like what sort of advice do you have there for guys?
Yeah, emails are proof of you doing it. You can always point back to it. But it's having your good staff on site. When I meet a client, I say to my clients, all our guys are user friendly. And you can talk to any of my guys, even if it's apprentice, and you can ask them, what's happening here? Why are you doing this? And they'll stop and they'll have a quiet little talk to you and make you feel that you're welcome on site, because I want my clients to feel welcome on site. And so it flows through all the way through that you've got to have the right crew, and you've got to be able to communicate it. Any changes, make sure you get changes put into writing. Make sure you get the acceptance of it from the client. I mean, I remember doing a job where we're a subcontractor to another builder, and the builder sent me approval of the change, signed by the architect and by the client, but he hadn't signed acceptance of it, so he didn't pay me it. Which is bit of a
wow,
unpleasant person.
Interesting way to do it.
Yeah,
but so no, that's good. Yeah. I mean, a big part with the variation, and it comes down to builders being too nice sometimes, even because they go, oh yeah, we can do that, and they make some changes. They don't communicate. It's not in writing. Yeah. They think they're doing the right thing. They trying to be nice, and then in the end they don't get paid for it.
Well, builders generally don't like conflict. I mean, I hate conflict. I'll do whatever I can to try and resolve things amicably, and it doesn't always work. And sometimes you have to take a stand, and you got to be, as I said earlier, you got to be empathetic to clients. And I try and view my clients as if they were my parents. How would I want somebody to treat my parents? And I try and use that as my basis of dealing with people. If you're fair and they're not fair, well, you've got to change your attitude sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a good way of looking at it, actually. Yeah, how would I want others to treat my parents in this scenario? I think that's a good way of kind of approaching it.
Yep.
In terms of your navigating personal life with business, I mean, obviously, if you're running a business, you've grown it over a long period of time. I assume you'll have a lot of wisdom for us. But you got wife, kids.
Yep, I've been happily married for coming up 50 years, I suppose. Well, not quite 50 years, but it's getting closer to that. And,
congrats.
Yep, thanks. We were married young, and it wasn't too long after that my first son came along, and it made me grow up, I suppose, very quickly. And the work I did in the weekends to try and make sure we had the mortgage payments going through. I mean, you talked earlier about the early days, but when I used to come home from work on pay days, we used to have the cash in our hands in those days, and we'd allocate out the $20 here for this and this and this, and I was coming home with $45 in my pocket. It was what, after tax, and we had to allocate it to the food and that, and often we'd have 50 cents left, and we were counting these 50-cent pieces each week. So I had a job working for a builder making picnic tables in his garage, and I used to go and make these picnic tables up for him to help increase our income. I did that for probably about 2 years.
Yeah.
It's probably about that stage actually we got my own to start changing things. So
yes, in the early days, you got to do what you got to do.
Oh, very
make
much
that and especially now as well. Like, you know, it's definitely harder out there. Cost of living has increased a lot, and just to get your baseline covered, you got to make some good money just to kind of cover the bases, especially if you have children. But how did you kind of navigate? And I mean, obviously, sometimes you just got to do it. You got to do early days. You got to make some money. If you leave early and come back late, it is what it is. But as the years has gone on, how have you navigated sort of family life, business life? You mentioned before your dad sort of taught you how to keep work at work, and when you come home, so what do? You do go home, take a, when you park up, you take a deep breath before you walk inside? Like, how do you approach it?
I've been lucky that I enjoy my work, and the bad days are bad days, and something might have gone wrong, and you've been working in the mud, and you're out in the rain, or it's not been pleasant. But when you come home, I've been able to turn off and enjoy the family, and I had young boys when I came home in the early days, and playing kicks in the hallway, and I had a nice little round soccer ball, and they whacked the ball up and down the hallway, and I taught them to kick left, right, and right foot, and they became very good at what in their sports that they did, and that was part of their development. But I suppose I turned off by turning back to the family and using that as a nucleus of a stress relief, I suppose. I suppose now I don't know why, but I'm always inclined to watch the news or something like that and just tune out and watch something that doesn't mean a lot. I don't like soaps or anything like that, though. But don't do that kind of thing.
Little Shortland Street before. Just something to kind of transition you from work into, like, now it's family. Yeah. I guess you're probably not as addicted to your phone as the younger generation, or maybe
no,
because that's probably a difficult one these days, where people are a little bit addicted to their phone. The emails are coming in. You got your Procore app probably on your phone, and then things that trigger, and so it's very hard to shut off these days.
It is, and at night, quite often you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're thinking about something, and it's it's not a good time to be thinking about work, but you often do solve your problems at that time of the night, and you actually, I don't know if everybody's like it, but I spend quite a bit of time sometimes going through the jobs and so I can go back to sleep, and once I've put my mind at peace, I know I've resolved it, and I can remember to tell that guy in the morning, okay, if you thought of this is how we can do it, or here's an issue, or solve that problem, or think about a problem with a client or something like that you might be having. But I don't like waking up in the middle of the night thinking about work too much, but sometimes it does happen.
Yeah, it does happen, eh? And sometimes it's in hot sweats as well. How do you, while we're talking about that, how do you, if you have woken up in hot sweats, sometimes it's due in the early days or whatever, or not even early days, but due to lack of cash flow. Sometimes it's due to being overwhelmed with too many projects on at a time, or how have you dealt with the stress? And do you think stress is good? It's just about managing it, or is it about reducing stress? How do you approach it?
Stress is a bit of a killer, really. It's something you try to manage really well. For us, the cash flow was the biggest stress at the time, and you're running out of work, and you've got guys working for you, and you're thinking about how you're responsible for these guys. I mean, when COVID came in, having to tell all the guys that we couldn't actually help subsidise them. We're relying on the government handout that they were giving at the time, and working out with those that needed more how we could help them. Because if we'd had to help everybody to the full event, we wouldn't be here today. You've got to remember that there's always another day tomorrow, and you know that things are going to improve. You've got to believe in yourself. And sometimes you've got to find a stress relief. I mean, you hear it so often, but I'd come off the tools. I'd been basically forced off the tools by the paperwork we had to do. I couldn't keep on doing it at night anymore. So I had 5 guys at the time, and I'd come off the tools to manage the stuff and work on the business, and so much that in the business as such. But I put on weight. I blew up, and my health, I suppose, deteriorated, and I found I was puffing going upstairs, and I thought, it's not like me. So I went to the doctors and found out I had a high blood pressure and things like that. So I had to do something drastic and change my diet. Started exercising. Went back to the swimming pool, and I used to swim when I was a younger person, and started swimming again. Did that 3 times a week, and changed my diet and got rid of the lovely cakes and that. I used to have morning tea and afternoon tea and supper after before going to bed or whatever, and changed all that and lost 16 kilos over a year and felt a bloody sight better for it. And
Wow.
so I think staying active outside of work is important. I know a lot of young guys now go to the gym, and I don't know how the hell they can go to the gym, because I know when I was an apprentice, I was absolutely buggered when I got home. But one of my other things that I do is I also do country Scottish dancing. So
Cool.
I find it's good for the coordination, good for the balance, certainly good for the brain and making you think about what you've got to be doing, and you have a lot of fun when you laugh at yourself for doing something stupid that
Yeah.
you go in the wrong direction that you shouldn't be going.
Yeah, that's pretty cool actually, because that snaps you completely out of your day to day. That's a completely other side of your brain, probably. Yeah.
I mean, when
It's
you're swimming,
active.
you can't think about anything when you're swimming. You think about breathing and getting to the end and getting back again, because you're in a squad. And the swimming, I find that I like being competitive still. And I used to. I'm in a master swimming group, and you're swimming beside in different lanes, and the lane beside you is a slightly slower lane, and the lane above us is the top lane, and you're trying to keep up with those guys, but making sure that the guys below you
Stay below you.
behind. If they go faster than you think, geez. So it's a competitive nature, and I think most builders out there that are leaders are naturally competitive, and it's something that I'll openly say I am.
That's awesome. Have you ever struggled with like, we all kind of probably do, like negative self-talk, thoughts coming up, being uncertain about whether you can do it, and how have you sort of dealt with that over the years?
Yeah, it's a huge thing. I mean, I've often questioned myself, why am I here doing this podcast? I mean, why does somebody want to talk to me? And I had the same. You do have the same feelings. I mean, I got heavily involved in Master Builders, and I became the Auckland president after 16 odd years on the board at the time, and I'd been involved in that. And you think, who am I being here, being in charge of the Auckland Master Builders? And you do doubt yourself. It's a passion that you do, and as I said, I love what I do. I love the building industry. I love going back and being involved in the Master Builders, and what I've done from it is really great, and what it's led to. I mean, I'm now involved in the BCITO on the National Advisory Group for carpentry. I'm the chair of the group. I ask myself how the hell they asked me to be chair, and it's what you develop. And I think people see that there's potential in you, and they believe in you. And as I said earlier, I'm a listener. I listen to people more than talk to people, and so it's the leadership role sits comfortably with me. I've been invited to be involved with the NZIA, the New Zealand Institute of Architects, on their contracts committee, and so they were reviewing their contract that they'd last written in 2018, I think it was, and we've been we worked through the whole contract, and I was the residential representative. We had two other commercial guys there, but I was able to have an influence on changes that I think are to the benefit of builders out there. We're waiting to see the actual document come to life, but when that does come to life, I'm sure builders will really appreciate some of the changes that are being made, and it's through my involvement in that I'm having a really good impact on the industry.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, because sometimes I guess it's just like human nature, right? Sometimes we just, you kind of doubt yourself sometimes, whether you can do things, and it's always kind of interesting to see how different people deal with that. And some people stand in front of a mirror and do like affirmations, and other people write down in their diary, and other people just go for a run up a hill and try to overcome the demons by running up a hill. So everyone's got a different way, right, of doing it.
Yep.
And so it's kind of always interesting to see. So we've sort of come to the end already of our hour. Like it goes pretty quick. I've really enjoyed having you on the podcast. I guess the last question is, did you have fun?
Oh yes, yeah, I have. Yeah, one of the things that probably hasn't been mentioned is success, but the way you view success is this kind of thing, and I'm very pleased that I've led the life I have, and I'm very pleased I've got a wife and family that have brought me joy over the years, and it's been great that I've been able to be involved in the industry the way I have. So, and seeing involvement with you guys here, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, well, that is success, I reckon, right there. So, yeah, appreciate you coming on. Thanks for that. Thanks, Ross.
Cheers. Thanks, Brad.